Okay, good morning to each of you. It's Thursday and we have class next Tuesday and then next Thursday and we are done, other than the final. So I have a few things to finish up from last class period talking about organic foods. Then we will have the debate where those assigned to this topic will try to convince us over. We'll give the pros and cons of various positions. And following that, there's part of a documentary that I'm going to finish class up with. So a few preliminaries. Here goes. On the syllabus, want to point out a couple small details that have changed. So today is the 23rd. We are going to have debate number 4 as scheduled. I want the final debate, the last debate, is going to be on April 30th, next Thursday. I've updated it on Moodle and I'm just doing it right here before your very eyes. So the last debate of the semester for the last group, which is looking at a whole foods plant-based diet, that will be next Thursday. Also, previously I had said the final exam would be available May 2. I don't know where that came from. It is due May 6th. That's when we would normally have our exam if it was an in-class exam. It is a take-home exam, similar format to till the midterm. So it will be available April 29. So you'll have a week to look at it, to work on it before it is due. Okay, so today, debate 4, me finishing up a few things about organic food, and then we'll look at the seed documentary. Next week, I'm going to talk with you about some alternative food systems, and then we'll have the debate 5 on April 30, the last day of class. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Let me just save this. Actually, I'll deal with that later. Won't waste your time. Okay, so that's the first thing. The next thing is I want to just follow up a little bit, something that we didn't get a chance to finish last class period. Here goes. Here we go, yeah. So you'll recall we talked about, actually I'll go here first. Sorry for all the sharing. So you recall that when we were looking at this issue of organic foods and healthiness, one review said, well, maybe there wasn't much difference. The second review said, yeah, there's greater concentrations of certain healthy plant compounds in organic foods and less cadmium. We looked at cancer risk, and only one of the cancers was less in the group of women who were eating mostly organic foods compared to those who didn't eat them at all. Only one of the cancers, I think it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or something, wasn't it? Yeah. But we commented, well, what were they eating when they were 17? How long are they following this group to see whether there was any difference? But that's the findings, and we can question or we can point out improvements in the design, but that's the results as they are. The last one I wanted to look at in just a little bit of a snapshot is looking at urinary pesticides. Does what we eat, whether it's organic or not, is that measurable in terms of pesticides in pee, in urine? Okay. Now, of course, the assumption is going to be that pesticides are bad for health and that there might be direct connections between pesticide consumption and various diseases. So this isn't looking specifically at disease outcomes, but it's looking at food intake versus and how that correlates to urinary pesticides. So let's just look at a few of the details of this one. Okay, so previous dietary intervention studies suggested that an organic diet can reduce urinary pesticides, although they largely focused on organophosphates. That's one class of pesticides. So what they wanted to do here was look at the impact of an organic diet on levels of insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides, or their metabolites. The body, you consume them in your food, maybe they're processed by the body. Again, they're measuring these things in urine. So they're not basing it on food intake, but they're measuring for these various pesticides in the urine. We collected urine samples from 4 racially and geographically diverse families before and after a diet intervention. So a relatively small sample, 4 families, 16 participants, so on average 4 family members. This would be an expensive study to conduct because you're going to be changing diets, you're going to be collecting urine samples. So depending on these results, it might justify a larger study. We observed significant reductions in urinary levels of 13 pesticides, metabolites, and parent compounds, representing organophosphate neonicotinoid. This is a category of insecticides that has been associated with or blamed with loss of honeybees, loss of bees, these neonicotinoids. Parathyroid, and 2,4-D. 2,4-D is basically what's put in weed and feed. It kills dandelions in your lawn. If your father or mother or grandfather, whoever is spraying the lawn each spring for dandelions, it's very possible that it contains 2,4-D or something related to it. It is for broadleaf weeds, so it does not kill grass. It gets at biochemical pathways in the broadleaf plants, which are different than the grasses. Okay, so what did they find? The greatest reductions were in clothianidin. It was down by 82%. Malathion, 95%. This category here, minus 60%. Metabolites or parent compounds of fungicides, and some of these were not detected amongst participants. Okay, so they concluded that an organic diet was associated with reductions in urinary secretion of several pesticides and their compounds. This adds to a growing body of literature that indicates that an organic diet may reduce exposure to a range of pesticides in children and adults. Okay, and so they go on. We're not going to look at the whole thing. I'll just look at the, so here's a summary of the parent compounds and what they measure for then in the urine. So this is the precursor compounds. This is what would be eaten. This is what they were measuring in the urine. So this is, pretty serious chemistry, biochemistry. If you diethyl phosphates, dialkyl phosphates, phenoxybenzoic acid. If you love chemistry, this would be good stuff for you. And then they looked at changes in these various compounds. So that this paper would be a little bit tougher going in terms of reading just because it's so much focused on chemistry. But from my perspective, just reading the abstract gives you a pretty good overall view as to what's going on. And you can see here in the, this is a helpful chart here. You can see the various substances and the nanograms per milliliter in the conventional versus the organic diet. So when you eat conventional produce, you very often are going to be exposed to pesticides and herbicides, some of which might be relatively harmless. All of them, of course, have been approved by the FDA and the EPA, but are they looking at it long term? Do they have all the information? It's probably not acutely toxic, but the fact is these are substances that aren't usually supposed to be in our bodies based on our history on our evolution and what are the consequences of having these substances in our bodies in terms of health, in terms of longevity. And we don't have all the answers, quite honestly. So that's what I wanted to point out, to share with you, just another piece of the puzzle as far as organic and whether it's better or not. Now, I'm going to stop sharing this here, and we are going to hear from, so I hope you're getting ready. Where are we here? Here we go. So today we are going to then hear from Courtney and Lauren and Katerina and Sarah. I've been as unbiased, I think, as possible. You probably detected that I have a preference for organic, although I can't show you a watertight case from the literature that that's necessarily the case. So we're going to hear what Lauren and Courtney and Katerina and Sarah have to say on this topic. So I invite you, please, let's see your faces. Can you please turn on your cameras? And Lauren and Courtney and Katerina and Sarah are going to talk with us. We're going to listen in on their discussion, their debate. So the topic, again, that we are considering, the assertion, the statement is that organic foods are not safer, healthier, or more environmentally friendly than conventional grown foods, and are thus a waste of money. So we'll hear opening statements, first of all, from Lauren or Courtney, showing how they agree with that statement. Then we'll have the opening statement from Katerina and Sarah, how they disagree, and then a little bit of back and forth, and the format overall. So between Lauren and Courtney, who is on first? The rest of you, if you're able, please do turn on your screens. We like to see it. Makes it seem more of a community. So if it's possible, I won't mention it again, but if you're appropriate or able to, please let us see your faces. For those of you who aren't in Helena today, it's a little bit cloudy and raining, and my wife and I were going to hike this morning, but we decided, nah, it was raining a little bit, so we've been going up into the hills. If you go down Park Avenue, head south, then the roads divide, and then up just to the right is Dump Gulch. We've been hiking up there. We saw shooting stars. We've seen yellow bells. There's some pasque flowers, which pasque refers to passion from Easter time. These flowers bloom around Easter. Of course, Easter bounces all over the calendar based on the cycles of the moon, so it's not a true predictor. It's a movable feast, and so the flower doesn't always align. Anyhow, so I hope you're having a good day and off to a good start. Opening statement from Lauren or Courtney. Who's on first?
I am.
Okay, let's hear it.
Organic foods are not safer, healthier, or more environmentally friendly than conventionally grown foods. Organic foods are not any better for a person's health. The in a year amount of pesticide residue left on conventionally grown foods is less toxic than 1 cup of coffee. Also, organic foods can cause an increased susceptibility to get cancer. Not only are there health issues associated with organic foods, there are also environmental problems. Organic foods still use pesticides on them, and these pesticides are toxic to both bees and humans. The fertilizers that are utilized by organic farmers, including cow, pig, and poultry manure and other natural composts to fertilize their fields, also create an increased amount of pollution in groundwater due to runoff. These fertilizers increase nitrate and acidic levels, which can have enormous consequences on local ecosystems. Additionally, because the farmers do not use herbicides, these lend farms to needing to till the land more frequently. By tilling more often, these farmers are using more fuel for their tractors, as well as separating microorganisms in the soil, releasing them into the atmosphere, creating higher CO2 emissions. Organic foods also promote economic social exclusion. The high price of organic foods makes it more accessible for the rich part of the population, leaving the poor and working class feeling more excluded. Overall, organic foods are not more safe, healthy, or environmentally friendly than conventionally grown foods.
Okay, so some strong opening statement there. Opening statement from Katerina or Sarah.
Okay. Organic foods are a beneficial and preferable choice to conventionally grown foods. Organic foods are grown without the use of growth hormones or antibiotics, genetically modified organisms, or synthetic fertilizers or fertilizers from sewage sludge, which is human feces. Ingesting synthetic hormones have been linked to an increased risk of cancer, and drug residue from the use of antibiotics in food is believed to contribute to widespread antibiotic resistance. Purchasing and eating organic foods is undoubtedly beneficial to overall health, both in the short term as well as for life. Additionally, organic foods use a minimal amount of synthetic pesticides and no irradiation to kill diseases or pests, or as an attempt to extend shelf life. Studies have shown that organic foods have high levels of polyphenols as well as high levels of omega-3 fatty acids, both of which are nutrients vital to maintaining a healthy diet. Not only is organic food better for the consumer's health, but organic foods also are better for the environment. Organic farming utilizes crop rotation, cover cropping, composting, and other methods to help improve the environment. In addition to superior farming methods, organic animal farming is by far much more ethical and ensures the most humane treatment as possible. Overall, organic foods are safer, healthier, and more environmentally friendly than conventionally sourced foods.
Okay, another very strong opening statement, and we have opposing views. So there should be lots to talk about. Follow-up, things that you want to mention. So first of all, to Courtney or Lauren, anything that you want to say in addition or to challenge from Sarah's opening statement?
First part they mentioned was that it is beneficial for animals to be more organic. But we found information that it actually causes more harm to the animals and probably more us if they don't receive some type of antibiotic so that they don't catch any diseases, which is probably will be transferred to us when we consume it. So I think it's more beneficial that animals have some type of vaccination to ensure their safety and health.
Okay, just back and forth, say what's on your mind, both sides. I won't interject too much.
Okay, well, I wanted to point out the topic of you said that it's not like eco-friendly, but the organic production system in the U.S. must adhere to the National Organic Program standards that integrate cultural, biological, and mechanical practices. These standards promote the recycling of resources and ecological balance while conserving biodiversity, and they are set and they all have to apply to those standards. And so they are like being more eco-friendly because of those standards. So.
And like we also mentioned, when you do provide antibiotics to those animals, it could build up a resistance. And so if there is a virus that comes through that has a resistance to those antibiotics, it can actually cause more issues for humans if we're ingesting those, if we have built a resistance to it, and those viruses can still change. So.
Any additional talking points? I know it's harder in this environment, but just let's hear what you're thinking or respond to your opponents.
I guess one of the things with the environmental issues is just that it, like, from using the animal manure, it gets into the groundwater and can damage like the ecosystem just because it makes the water more acidic and fills it with nitrates. So that's where we found that was the issue.
We were looking at studies about that too. And in regards to like drinking water, like it's all like filtered, so it's like safe for humans, and it's like low levels of nitrate because like that animal manure would get into the water anyways, like in a natural system, like just as much as like a pasture would for like just like a cow, a person that raises cows like on a farm. And so it would be like that same amount, which like hasn't proven to like damage the ecosystem that much. And there are like laws in place, I'm pretty sure, like how far you have to be away from streams and like where you put that manure and things like that.
Well, I looked up at something and it said that like there are certain laws about being so much like a distance between the river and like the irrigation, but it still has a lot of runoff between like going into the rivers and like the lakes. So there's still like a significant amount of pollution that is still going into like the environment. So
one thing then, just to, since you've mentioned it, this whole issue of runoffs and fertilizer. And so, yes, when you're using organic fertilizer or organic growing practices, they will make use of animal manures. If you're growing conventionally, they'll be using chemical fertilizers. And so it's not as though the issue of runoff is unique, at least in my understanding, to organic agriculture. There's significant runoff associated with conventional agriculture. Now, the issue of potential contamination, if there's bacteria, salmonella, something like that in the animal manure, that potentially could contaminate the fruits or the vegetables. So you're not going to have that same problem with conventional fertilizers, but I don't think that, and I could be wrong, but I would be surprised if this issue of runoff and nitrates into the water system is only going to be the case for animal manures. It could be an issue with chemical, conventional fertilizers as well.
another question we had was, how does like nutrition vary from organic to inorganic, and is it really worth the price of paying the organic price versus inorganic?
Yes, so there was a 2014 meta-analysis from the British Journal of Nutrition that found that organic foods not only are less likely to have detectable levels of pesticides, but because of the differences in the fertilization techniques, they're also 48% less likely to test positive for cadmium, which is a toxic heavy metal that accumulates in the liver and kidneys. And additionally, there was a 6-year-long study in the Journal of Agricultural Food Chemistry, which looked at specifically organic onions, and they were shown to have a 20% higher antioxidant content. And so there have been studies that have been showing that there is a difference in the way that organic foods are grown, that it does actually help to increase the antioxidant content and also helps to reduce toxic chemicals that can accumulate in your liver and kidneys, and that could be really unhealthy for you.
We found information that showed that organic food was only different in the phosphorus level, not overall in like what you were saying. But we also found that like it was more worth it for children and adults to produce like to buy non-organic food to have like a healthier diet versus when they have to like buy organic food only in certain times of the year. So they are more likely to have healthier choices when they choose non-organic, because non-organic foods are throughout the year, when non-organic foods are throughout the year, when organic foods are only like parts of the year.
That's an interesting observation. I think in many cases the organic foods are year-round. Your point, actually, let me not. So I'll just jump in on that. I don't know how. I hadn't noticed, as someone who normally buys organic, I hadn't noticed a lot of seasonality that way. Other comments, observations, Sarah, Katerina, responses. And then the rest of you be thinking if you have any specific questions or other things to mention that haven't come up yet. This affects us all. We all eat, we all make purchasing decisions. So this is relevant if anything is.
I just wanted to point out, like, again, with the whole healthy eating part, like, obviously when you're like eating a diet, like in order for it to be like truly healthy, you need to be eating like whole foods and like fruits and vegetables and like avoiding those refined sugars and carbs. And so like saying that organic foods are just like not as healthy as like other foods are, like, yes, any diet can be like compared that way. Like, so it's the matter of like what you eat of the organic foods, and like that's how you make your diet healthy. And incorporating those organic foods means less pesticides and things like that. that add to the benefits of the health besides eating whole foods.
Yeah, and additionally to that, a lot of research, like what you brought up, they only look at one or two specific nutrients instead of broadening the scope of their research and looking at all the nutrients that are present in the food. And additionally, these studies are often not carried out for long enough of a duration to really make the statement that they don't carry any nutritional benefits. That's a problem with a lot of research that says that organic food necessarily isn't healthier.
Questions or comments from those of you listening in on things that you think need to be addressed a little bit further? Not surprisingly, oh, go ahead, Ethan, first, and then I've got a question. Go ahead, Ethan.
I had a quick question. I know that in our Dr. Schaefer, he talked a little bit about like the known associations of organic foods decreasing the risk of like certain cancers and different stuff. I was wondering if either of you guys found whether or not organic foods increased or if you found any studies that helped to verify that.
You know, everything that I looked at, I didn't really see anything that specifically looked at like a cancer, but it was overall just not the use of artificial growth hormones and antibiotics that have been known to increase your risk of cancer. And so just by decreasing the amount of those synthetic hormones and steroids within these foods is what helps to make organic foods better for preventing cancer.
Okay.
I had a question, Courtney, in your introduction, I think if I heard you right, you said that there might be actually associations between eating organic foods and cancer. Did I understand you correctly, or what were you hinting at there, or what were you getting at? Did you find a paper or something that suggested that, or?
I don't think so.
It was in your introduction statement. I thought I heard you say that organic foods were associated with higher cancer, but maybe I misunderstood you. But if you did have some evidence on that or further to say, I'd be happy to hear it.
I think what I was meaning is that to help reduce cancer, it's recommended to eat at least 5 servings of fruit and vegetables per day. But I mean, if you don't have the option between organic and inorganic foods, it's better to choose the non-organic and get those 5 servings than choose the organic and not get as many.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And that is an interesting point, because the fact is, depending on the product, but organic foods at Real Foods or natural grocers here in town are more expensive than non-organics at Vans or Safeway or something like that. And so the question is, if money is a significant factor, which for many people, not all people, but for many people it is it better to have, as Courtney's saying, the 5 servings or more of fruits and vegetables, even if they're non-organic, if they're conventional, versus a smaller number of servings of organic foods? Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if a person's on a tight food budget, you're going to have to make those decisions, quite honestly. For some people, if a person's well off, I'll say for my wife and I, we don't have any kids, didn't have a family, and Carroll teachers don't make a great deal of money, but for us, we don't have a stated food budget. We buy what we want pretty much when it comes to food, and we're very careful with our other expenditures, so we can, at the end of the month, things can still balance out. But if you've got a large family or a smaller income than a Carroll teacher, a person might have to start making those decisions. And that's why, as an aside, the idea of looking at the Clean 15 or the Dirty Dozen, if you are concerned about pesticides on your food, maybe you'll buy organic from the so-called Dirty Dozen, and then the Clean 15, the ones with wrappers and covers on them, strictly from a health perspective, it would be less beneficial in terms of avoiding pesticides for getting organic ones of the Dirty Dozen rather than the Clean 15. So that's why those usages, those lists are helpful. Anyone else? The rest of you, most of you, as I recall, when we surveyed, most of you don't particularly buy organic foods. Are you skeptical of what Sarah and Katerina are saying? Okay. So yeah, it's an issue that affects all of us, and I hope through our, I wouldn't call this an in-depth consideration, but our overview, we've looked at several papers, we've looked at research, we've heard from some of our presenters today, additional research to help you to make informed decisions about your own purchasing habits. For me, I'm entirely convinced that our food is our medicine, and that what we eat has a huge, huge impact on our health, which is why I'll say my wife and I, we you know, if we want something and it's organic and it's more expensive, okay, who cares? That type of thing. I'd sooner pay more for my food and less for future medical care. Is there any guarantee that I won't get cancer? No, both my parents had cancer. They both survived. My mother had it twice. She had breast cancer 7 years ago, and she had uterine cancer about 20 years ago or more. And my father had prostate cancer. Maybe it's in the genes. Maybe it's in the, I didn't grow up eating organic food. Who knows? There could be cellular mutations in my body at this minute. I mean, all of us have cellular mutations, and some of them become cancers and some don't. So there's no guarantees. But for me, and I think it's important to at least to consider as you look ahead to your future, to what extent do you have control over your health future? We can't control our genes, but we can control our physical activity levels. We can control to a significant extent what we put in our bodies. And so I would encourage you to, in an informed manner, in an evidence-based manner, make those decisions as best as you can, and control those things that you can control. So that's my preaching to you, I suppose. The next, so we've got in this class about 45 minutes. About 4 years ago, a documentary came out. Was there a question? No,
Yeah, do you want us to give our closing statements?
Oh,
or...
of course. Oh,
okay.
Yes, I'm in too much of a rush. Closing statements. Thank you, Katerina. So we hear closing statements from Courtney or Lauren, and then Sarah and Katerina.
Non-organic food products are looked at by proper authorities such as the United States government agencies to ensure that food is going to be consumed is not harmful to people nor animals. Non-organic food is beneficial for families that are from low to high incomes trying to feed their families healthier food options. Organic foods are not at hand for the high demand American people needs for consumption of fruits and vegetables, grains, and so on. Overall, organic foods are not safer, healthier, or more environmentally friendly than conventional food growing.
Okay, thank you. And probably Katerina?
Mm-hmm. So there's no doubt that organic foods are a better choice as compared to the alternative of conventionally grown foods. Organic foods are safer, healthier, and more sustainable for the environment. The harmful effects of pesticides, growth hormones, and antibiotics that are commonly present in conventionally sourced foods have been proven to cause long-term health effects in consumers, emphasizing the need for organically sourced foods. By primarily eating organic foods, both short-term and long-term health will be undoubtedly increased, which will actually save money for consumers. Organic foods not only provide numerous health benefits, but also are much more sustainable and ethical method of sourcing food. Overall, organic foods are safer, healthier, and more environmentally friendly than conventionally sourced foods.
Okay, so we have opposite conclusions, and you guys can weigh the evidence and make your decisions, quite honestly. Okay, thank you to Katerina and Sarah and Courtney and Lauren. And then just repeating, I hope you were all here when I mentioned it earlier, we will have our final debate about a whole foods, plant-based diet that will be next Thursday, April 30th, not the 28th as originally scheduled. Okay, so Amber and Josie and Ethan and Shamrock will be giving us their perspectives on that, another challenging and controversial topic. Okay, so as I was starting to say, back about 4 years ago, I think in 2016, my parents were visiting Helena and we're thinking, okay, what to do with parents who come to visit. And it turned out there was at the Myrna Loy a documentary called Seed, S-E-E-D. And we went to see it and I was really inspired. And so this is an area that we haven't talked about. We've been talking about plants and how they're grown. We've been talking about carbs versus proteins and various aspects. I want, starting today and then next week, we're going to step back even a little bit further. And I want you to think even more broadly, sort of as how we grow our food, where it comes from, not just, you know, are they using herbicides or not? Are they tilling or not? Are the animals getting antibiotics or not? But just thinking even more completely, more broadly. Right now in this country, and I don't have the news items before us, but every day I'm reading, you know, there was America's largest pork processing plant in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, North Dakota, or maybe South Dakota, wherever Sioux Falls is, has closed down. Beef processing plants, because the workers are infected with viruses. And so those who produce pigs, the farmers who are raising pigs, now there's in a sense, a traffic jam because these pigs are ready to be turned into bacon and the processing plants are closed down. So what do they do with the pigs? Because there's more young ones back here that are going to be ready in a couple weeks to be sent for processing, as we euphemistically put it. Okay, so there are predictions that in the next couple weeks there could be bacon shortages, pork shortages. Okay, and it's giving us some insights into what a structured, mechanized system we have for producing food. It's efficient. It gives us relatively cheap food compared to the rest of the world. But when there's a disruption, the system can seize up. The system is not flexible. It is not dynamic. And so this current situation we're living through, and it's not just going to affect meat production. It's going to affect fruit and vegetable production because maybe migrant farm workers can't get across the Mexican border to work in the fields in California because of border restrictions. Or in Canada, a lot of the farm workers don't come so much from Mexico, but they fly up from Honduras and Guatemala. Oh, but they've got to be in a 2-week quarantine before they can work and plant the cabbages in the province of Quebec. So the cabbages are going to be late. What are the implications on that as well? So stepping back a little bit and considering where our food comes from in terms of its origins, the types of farms and production facilities that make our food. And it all starts with the seed. And so that's what we're going to look at for the remaining 35 minutes or so of class. Okay, so this is a documentary, and please pay attention and be inspired like I was, perhaps. So I'm going to share my screen. I won't, yeah, and at the end of class, I'll have a couple of neat things to say, but here goes.
When I first came here, we were a hippie, back to nature, self-sufficient thing. We were watching too many Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone movies, and reading too much Thoreau. We were trying to seek a different vision. The first time I saw bean collections and so on, it was like, whoo, a jewelry store lit up, and I've always just been dazzled by diversity. I don't like people that are all straight, all gay, all communist, all Christian. Let them all be there, and absolutely the different kinds of seeds. My great-grandfather was a farmer. Looking through our family photo album, I have some of these, and because I know for a fact that 90-something% of the things are now extinct. They're my family, and they're gone. I have this horrible vision someday that the Creator would look down and come look around and say, well, where is this? Well, where did that go? I created this. Where did it go? How come it's not here? I see myself as Noah, not God. Noah didn't get to decide whether the crocodiles came on the ark or not, or the black flies. His job was to load them on, okay? That's my job.
Hi, are there technical problems here?
Yeah, we're just seeing, I know a bunch of us are just seeing like a black screen with the subtitles.
Oh, the black screen, but you are seeing the subtitles.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
picture
the subtitles.
Okay, just a sec. Thanks for letting me know. I don't know what's going on here. Just a sec. Are you seeing the screen now?
Yeah, but it's only showing a black screen for the video itself.
Huh. I wonder if, okay, yeah, but, oh. But you're seeing the subtitle, but not the screen itself. Huh. So are you seeing, like, my cursor see the untold story and the description, the text, it's just the screen itself is black?
Yeah.
Okay, they must have some sort of a protection or something. So this is a YouTube movie that I'd purchased. They must have some way of blocking it so that it can't be distributed through Zoom somehow, is my guess. Okay, well, it looks like that's not going to work then. I don't want you to just hear the soundtrack and the text because the photography is spectacular. I will look at it a little bit more, but it looks like it's not working for the moment. And I guess then I will say to you, I don't have any backup here, and I'm not just going to talk off the cuff for half an hour. I will say to you that I will see you on next Tuesday. Okay, sorry about this, but this is the first time I'd tried doing it this way. I didn't anticipate this problem, so just one of those things. So I'll say thanks for participating. Thanks to our debaters, and I'll see you guys on next Tuesday. Have a good weekend to all. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. You as well.